Hello, everybody. We are here with a session for each one of you teachers out there. The last 3 weeks that Radhika and I have been bringing to you our podcasts, our discussions. They were more generic. However, as we move ahead, we want to get into very specific content which will bring forth some actionable points for you as teachers, which you can take back into the classroom, try out, practice, and give us the feedback. I have with me Radhika Srinivasan, my partner in this podcast, and both of us are very happy to come back to you once again and to enable the teaching community with any nuggets of information that we have collected over the years as teachers and principals. Yes, dear Radhika, over to you.
Thank you, Asha. I think we are excited. And again, one point to note is we are acting on every feedback that we receive. So please feel free to write to us to share your feedback so that we will act on it. And so even this comes from feedback that, do give us some actionable tips and strategies. And so today, we're going to speak about something which is very, very important for teachers, the skill domain. What are the skills that teachers need? What are the absolute skills that, non-negotiable skills, and some add-on skills which would make a teacher successful, not only in the current scenario, but in the future also. So our topic today is skills that teachers need.
What I would like to bring to attention over here is that we expect almost everything in our teachers. Our teachers have to be great communicators. Our teachers have to be up to date with the latest in technology. Our teachers must have every bit of knowledge under the sun. Our teachers must be able to guide our children very well. They should be able to handhold the children emotionally also, right? And so on and so forth and so on and so forth, right? When we look at it, I see that research tells us the one singular point that has directly and always impacted student outcomes, learning outcomes, is effective classroom instruction. So the first skill set has to support effective classroom instructions. Over and above that, there are many attendant skill sets. Radhika, I would like you to expound on that if you think there's anything else that you would like to add here.
So, classroom instruction is, I would say, a non-negotiable for teachers. If you already have an innate ability, or if you have an intrinsic leaning towards that, well and good. If not, you need to work on going to be able to deliver classroom instruction so effectively that the learners go away feeling enabled, empowered, and so on. I have put together what I feel that the top 5 skills, and my top one is digital literacy and technology integration. There is enough evidence to say that this is becoming a part and parcel of a teacher's portfolio, and it really came to limelight during COVID. Before COVID, the statistics say that only 10% of teachers were already tech enabled or were digitally literate. But after COVID, I would say, happy to share that it's, that the thing that only 10% now are not able to integrate technology into their lessons. So if you take digital literacy, some actionable strategies could be taking micro credentials from various MOOCs or from various online sources, digital sources, many which are free. Also joining online teacher communities. And at my school, and I always prepare teachers towards it, to take one new digital tool every month. Don't rush it. Don't start working on 100 tools, but work on one, and through the year, at least work on 6 to 8. So that would be my actionable strategy for.
Okay. So from taking off from the main point, improving classroom instruction, the quality of instruction. I think digital skills, armed with digital technology skills, will surely enable a teacher to be on top of the game, especially when it concerns children, right? So when I'm talking about effective quality of instruction, which is the most important factor that is affecting and influencing student outcomes, I think it's important for me to unbox effective instruction. First is explanations have to be made very clearly. Second is the teacher must engage in active questioning. Third, she should remain completely in focus of student understanding. She must provide for enough opportunities for active learning and collaboration. And the teacher must use well-structured lessons to help students engage with and understand the material. So when I put all these things together, it is very important that the teacher has a complete understanding of her game.
So I think one thing, like one actionable point is once you structure your lesson, you must also note down how much is the teacher talk time and a student talk time. When you structure your lesson, as you mentioned, Asha, that you prepare a well structured lesson. It's very important to pencil down how much is this explanation going to be, how many minutes. If I'm speaking for 2 minutes on this point, then I must allow the students to at least speak for 1.5 minutes or 2 minutes to give their views and so on. So documenting teacher talk time versus student talk time is one part of the structured lesson which would really help to make the lesson effective.
Also very important is the pedagogical content knowledge. Now, pedagogical content knowledge, it's very simply put together, is knowledge of the subject, the content that you're going to deliver in class, and also how to teach it. It's a very unique knowledge. And that's it, like wine, it gets better with each. The older the teacher is in her profession, older and mindful the teacher is in her profession, the better she gets at this. So pedagogical content knowledge is what everybody would look for in a very good teacher, for being an effective teacher in a classroom, and which is directly, as I said, and I underscore it even once more, saying that is directly impacting student learning outcomes. So that is one thing that I think is very, very important. The next important thing is the teacher should have an arsenal of techniques with her, how to engage the children, depending on the concept that is getting delivered, depending on the lesson that is being delivered in the classroom, how to engage the children so that learning is made meaningful and learning gets deep. Because deeper the learning, the more is the retention. So if I have with me an arsenal of techniques, then the skill that I must possess is what stage should I use, at what stage of the lesson should I use a particular technique over the other, This also again comes with the number of
with
years.
Experience. With experience.
So this is very, very important, huh?
Yes, and it's very important for the teacher that even though she's put it in her lesson plan or the unit plan that I will use this particular strategy or this particular technique, if she finds that the class is a little, sleepy, dull, if it's the class before break, if it's the class after break, she needs to tweak that strategy and she needs to think on her feet and quickly change it and make that, I remember that during a biology class when I was teaching the structure of the heart and the flow of blood through the chambers of the heart, on one particular day, I found that the children were really not interested. They seemed to be, very dull. I said, let's go to the playground. I got a piece of chalk and, I drew a very rudimentary shape of the heart with the chambers of the heart. And I had them all walk through the heart to show the flow of blood. I had four students stand there at the valves. And I said, now you have to decide that when the blood is flowing from this direction to this, are you going to be open, shut? So it was such an effective lesson And I quickly had to tweak my plan. My plan was to show them a PowerPoint and show them an animation video of the flow of blood through the heart. But I thought that this would be a better way to do it. Again,
It's very good because you can set up a very nice maze with that, with that
yes,
kind of an activity. Like what you said just brought to surface the situational awareness. Every teacher must have that little acumen of what is right for that situation and quickly tweak. I know a million things, but what will work in this situation and how will it be more effective and how will it make my learning more effective and lesson more effective? What you said is just right. A teacher should have that kind of skill of situational awareness.
yes. So I just jump into my second, which I think the second top skill after digital literacy is social emotional learning competence. Studies indicate that the teacher who has a very strong social emotional competency can increase student engagement by nearly 30%. So research really puts it that if you have an emotional connect with the teacher, and all of us go way back. Even I remember the teachers not because of the content that they taught us, but because of the way that they touched our lives, or that encouraging smile from the teacher, or that nod, or the validation and the affirmation. We would look for that from the teacher, and we would want to please that teacher, not so much. So I remember my physics teacher, and physics was not a subject which I was very fond of. I moved into biology, which is very far away from physics. But I remember my physics teacher from school, and she was so sharp, and she was so good with the way that she reached out, and she made us comfortable with the subject. So I think the social emotional learning competence,
Yes.
that would be.
I too agree with you. If there's a teacher waiting for you, I don't think I would take leave from school at all. If I know that this teacher is expecting me in class and she will looking forward to seeing me there and helping me with my lesson, I do not think I would ever take leave from school if I were to become a student again.
Sure.
Absolutely. And see, behavior management is absolutely, absolutely important. How I connect with my student, I should first of all come to class from baggage free. Emotionally, I need to be kind of empty myself
I
before
think
class.
that is very intrinsically linked with SEL. So, how to
Yes, yeah.
manage behavior is.
Behavior. So when I come into the class and I am able to bring in that smile when I come in, a 220-volt smile when I come into the class, and I'm able to welcome every child and make every child feel that this is his space. Every student must feel that this is his or her space. There's complete inclusion of all kinds of personalities. It will come only if I am willing to receive them with an open heart and with open arms. So that's very, very important. This SEL component first comes. The first step has to be made by the teacher. The first effort has to be made by the teacher. The teacher has to welcome every child and make every child safe in the class. Then the children will want to die for that teacher. Then the subject is not important. The subject becomes important.
Yes, true that. So I have, kind of noted down the third skill. I made a few notes before our session today. I think both of us are a little more prepared for this session than we were in the first three podcasts. So I put down adaptive teaching and differentiated instruction. There is a lot that goes, a lot of material to read, and I think it's the need of the hour. We all didn't have any of these concepts when we were students, but I think there is a lot to learn from the copious research studies, and also a lot of experiments and action research that is being done in this space. So again, 25 to 35% of student engagement can increase if differentiated instruction takes place. So some actionable points is to build a repository of varied teaching materials. Don't just have every time a worksheet. You can ask a student to create a jingle. You can ask I remember that in one of my earlier schools there was a child who created a rap song about the periodic table, And it was so good that we asked him to write it down, and it's put up in the chemistry lab forever and ever in that school. And
That multiple intelligences at play.
yes, and he would be called upon even when he was an alumnus. He would be called upon to come to school to teach the students that rap song. It was very popular.
Right, right. So, taking off from what you just mentioned, it is very, very important for teachers also to be able to be on top of the game. I'm repeating this phrase once again, but what I feel is that academic research skills are of utmost importance. You cannot, you cannot stay, you cannot remain, what to say, ignorant of all that is happening in your field, not just the subject, but also all that is happening in the area of teaching and in pedagogy, right? So, like you said, academic research skills are very, very important for teachers to stay updated and keep upskilling themselves.
I think, as a school leader, we must bring in that atmosphere of research. Teachers already have a lot on their plate. They have, their schedules, they have papers to score, they have a lot of administrative tasks that unfortunately gets loaded onto their plate. So I think it's also, if we want to create an atmosphere of research, let's make time on their schedule. Let's give them a half day with no, nothing else on their plate. Let them get to the library. Let the librarian source out some good reading for them, and at least let us make it a little more easier. Let facilitate that and bring about an atmosphere where we tell them that it's okay, you do at least half an hour of reading or 1 hour of reading per week, but we need to create that atmosphere in schools. And perhaps, we can give them such support that we can have the librarian source out or one mentor teacher source out some good reading and pass it on.
The more you read, the better you are at academic vocabulary.
Yes.
Academic vocabulary is something every teacher has to pull out from her reading and bring it back into the classroom.
Yes.
Yes. Every teacher should be equipped with all the kind of words in her bucket of vocabulary. Whatever the subject, even if it's a social studies or a science or it's mathematics, mathematics means mathematics vocabulary related to maths. If it is science, it is scientific vocabulary. If it is generally social science or any other subject, it has to be subject related vocabulary. And this will come only if she reads well, she has researched well, and she is using this terminology. Only then she will be able to.
Because the learners in our class are far ahead. I mean,
yes.
the content is done and dusted. They've read the chapter, they've seen the videos, they are 10 steps ahead of you. So it's as you mentioned, top of the game. I think that's the phrase of the day. We need to encourage teachers to become top of the game. And I think in this way, it's also all right to accept your vulnerability in the class. You might not be knowing everything. You may not have complete mastery, but you have to be open and say, oh, that was a word that I was not aware of. Let me look it up and I will use that now. This was a wonderful word that you introduced to the class. Let me look up, or let me quickly open my Google Dictionary to check out the synonym.
So that is where the teacher is then, no? She has moved herself. The students are, teacher is 2 notches higher if she's using academic vocabulary.
Yes.
So we cannot ever emphasize more the need of academic vocabulary in the classroom. And
Yes.
I am requesting every teacher to be well-read and take the class 2 steps forward by using academic vocabulary and bringing that culture into the children also.
Yes. So I've also listed the next on my list is cultural competence and inclusive teaching. The way the dynamics of the classroom are so different now. We have children from different demographic backgrounds. We have from different family backgrounds. We have children coming from single parent homes. We have multicultural families. It's not unknown to have, grandparents following two different faiths, religious faiths, or language diversities, cultural diversities. So I think
classroom itself is a very diverse community.
That's what I think. More and more we are seeing these kind of very diverse classrooms and dynamic classrooms now. So a teacher has to be very culturally competent and inclusive in the way that inclusivity, of course, not only with children with special needs. We are seeing a lot of children. At my school, we have 3 or 4 wheelchair-bound students. We have children with special needs. We have autistic students. So it is important that though I might not be a special educator, but I should know how should I deal with, or how should I handle a particular student in my class. And being culturally responsive also would ensure that student participation in the activities increases. And perhaps do a little homework on what different how diverse is my classroom. If I'm not sure, check up with my senior teachers, check up with the special educators.
Here, the skill that is very important is a teacher, she must know her students.
Yes.
She must know her class well.
Yes.
She must know her own self very well, and also the school that she's serving in. So all these are very important factors, and to see how much she can kind of engage in this kind of bringing in this element into the classroom. Looking at the cultural diversity in the group, and how she will be able to very sensitively handle these differences. It's a tall order. It's very difficult for a teacher, she has to constantly keep changing her, like it be a Bharatanatyam dancer with many, many, many steps in just 5 minutes, She has shifting from one role to another, or one behavior to another behavior, and all encompassing, and taking in every kind of a difference that is there in the community out there. I think it's amazing work good teachers do, and I'm always hoping and wishing that all this is always kind of acknowledged and recognized.
I had a conversation with a children's book author. I forget her name now, very many years back. And she said, I'm very mindful of the kind of illustrations which are used in children's books. I always have a mix of fair-skinned and dark-skinned children. I always make it a point to include a child in a wheelchair. When I'm showing a group of children, I can just show a very generically homogenized group of children, but I make it a point to make it heterogeneous and to include children with different skin tones, maybe a child in a wheelchair, and that should also become a point of conversation when the child is reading the book at home or with parents, or even in school, that this is your environment. You might have children with different skin tones, with different capabilities, wheelchair bound, neurodiverse. So it's very, very important to be mindful of this. And thankfully, there is good work being done in this space to make children and teachers more culturally, what should I say, accepting, and also culturally active, and also want to know more. I think it makes a big difference if a teacher is culturally sensitive.
I remember what Dylan Williamson said, Dylan Williamson has once mentioned that everything works somewhere. Nothing works everywhere.
Yeah.
So we will have to start putting in these small things in our teachers. Many of them are already doing it. In so many years, I have seen them very, very, very sensitive teachers who have tried all these things, are very, very encouraging and all-encompassing and very inclusive. So hats off to all those teachers who have made the day for their children.
True. So I've also, Asha, I've written one, among the top 5 skills, I've written the 5th skill as data literacy and assessment. And I think data-driven instruction is known to improve student outcomes by 25 to 30%. If you use data well, data tells the stories, but it's for you to interpret those stories, and to be able to interpret that is really, really a skill.
To be able to sift the noise from the voice,
Yes.
and the
Yes.
voice noise, that's
Yes.
very important, because data can give you all kinds of stories. It depends on what you are looking for. If I'm looking for how effective my classroom is, I need to take the data that is very relevant to how my classroom has become more effective. So, like you said, it is an absolutely imperative skill, and teachers need to be trained in this particular skill.
In data analysis.
Use it for assessments, how to use.
And there are a multitude of tools, multitudes of strategies, and I think this is a skill which is always going to help you, whether it is to plan your lesson, whether it is to plan your
Assess.
your assessments, whether it is to plan effective outcomes,
classroom strategies.
Yes.
Yeah.
So data literacy. So I've listed the 5 skills, and you've listed a few. We've given some action strategies to teachers.
One skill and one overriding skill, which is absolutely non-negotiable. Can we kind of delve upon one overriding skill that will be absolutely non-negotiable in the context of a teacher?
So I think effective communication, you nailed it. I was about to say the same thing. I think effective communication is something which is so overarching over all of the skills that we've mentioned, both driving classroom instruction and the interactions beyond the classroom, whether it is with your peers, whether it is with the all-important stakeholders like parents, whether it is your management, whether it is your teacher community. For every one of these to be successful, you need to have an effective communication. If you are, if you're blessed with good communication skills already, work on making it sharper, more precise. If you don't have it, there's always help available. There are many.
Can we unbox these communication skills? What is effective communication? Can we unbox it so that we give them take home saying that this is how I can.
So let me start with, to be an effective communicator, you need to be an active listener. You need to listen, to respond and not react. And many a times when a person is speaking in front of you, in your head, you're framing already what you are supposed to do. Maybe some of the meaning of what that other person is saying is already lost because you're not actively listening.
So for me, your response.
Yes. So for me, active listening is one strand of effective communication.
Very good. Wonderful. Secondly, I think, like you said, like we mentioned earlier, subject knowledge is very important, and vocabulary.
Content.
Yeah, content and vocabulary. Vocabulary is a very, very important element of effective communication. You can be everything, but if you do not know how to communicate effectively, a lot of all that you are gets diluted in the classroom.
I'm going to add the third strand, like after active listening and after, effective content. The third I'd like to say is body language. It makes an important part of effective communication. You might be saying the right words, you might be using the right tone, but if you have put on a very stern demeanor of you're in a closed position, the meaning is lost because they're feeling not welcomed. Maybe the person in front of you is not feeling welcomed or not feeling accepted in that. So body language, third, I would say body language is an important strand of effective communication.
Another one could be communication with all stakeholders, right? Your ability to communicate with parents with ease and the right kind of communication and feedback to parents. The communication, professional communication in the staff room. That's an extremely important aspect of being an effective communicator. You must clearly know the difference between what is professional and what is not professional, especially when you are in your workplace, with your peers, with your colleagues, with your seniors, with the other stakeholder in the management and the parents. That's also a very important element, to kind of get the teachers coached on it.
So, make varying your the type of communication depending on the stakeholder.
Absolutely. So you have to have that range of skills, in communication. So now who we are communicating with and what is the extent to which you should communicate and what is professional communication.
Being overly friendly, being overly formal, all of that. It's a very thin line between. It's a thin line between being, teasing and bordering on bullying. Sometimes that's
correct. Intimidating the other colleagues.
yes.
You have to be sensitive to all this. And also, what is professional communication in the staff room? It's very important. How much you should engage in informal, casual conversation? How much it should be to get back to serious professional conversations, about collaboration, about feedback, about assessments. A lot of the staff room conversations, beyond your lunch hour and your tea time should be more professionally oriented.
I would also add one strand of communication, of effective communication here is, writing, for example, applications, writing emails, very professionally worded, or, even email etiquette, for example, it becomes such a bother in an organization. Whom should we mark in CC and who should not be marked in CC and all of that. I found that there is a dire need to coach teachers on this. It hasn't come to us naturally. We've not done this before. So writing a professionally worded email, or writing a report. Now, teachers are called upon to do all of that. So, my last this thing of strand of effective communication, I feel, is that to use good maybe templates or thankfully
AI
can help you with that. But you can really smell the AI far a mile away in an email. But again, it's all right if you know how to use it. And writing a professional report, writing a professional email, writing, acknowledging email etiquette, all of that, I think, makes a huge part of a teacher's persona.
So this makes for one good module on, making the teacher an effective communicator in a professional development plan.
Yes.
Giving a full 1 day's module, if you kind of structure it, it will come out very well.
Yes.
I'm so excited.
Yes.
Yeah.
So we've kind of given a whole range of skills, both non-negotiable, partially negotiable, perhaps. I won't say negotiable to any extent. None of the skills that we've mentioned today in our conversation are in any way lesser important than each other. But there were some absolutely non-negotiable and some perhaps we will allow teachers to work on them. And that would be the mark of a successful teacher versus someone who is reaching the point of success, a pinnacle of success.
So as we come to the close of our session today, I want to discuss one question. What is the one thing that we want to take off the teacher's plate? I'm dying to take this off the teacher's plate.
So, if you would ask me, I would say proxy classes. Poor things are so burdened with, you know, if we could make a plan for proxy classes to be run by AI, if perhaps, an AI teacher could take charge of a proxy class, that could be one of the things.
So I'm not at all surprised, because that was also what was on my mind when I asked you this question. The substitutions. What happens is, very often when you are sitting to prepare your lessons, or you're correcting a set of notebooks, or you're preparing feedback for the classroom, suddenly it gets interrupted by a proxy that comes in. Proxy per se is not the culprit. However, what happens, the number of proxies that come to you, and sometimes that is very annoying and very irritating to a teacher. That's one aspect. Secondly, every single leak in the school has to be plugged by the presence of a teacher. So you keep getting pushed from one to another. There is your key role, that your key role is somewhere, you're pushed aside. Yeah.
Yes.
So I think we have to understand that the teacher in the classroom is sacrosanct, right? That is the most important role. So even if you want to allot other responsibilities and duties to the teacher, we have to very mindfully do it, saying that no, we cannot take away the quality input that the teacher is offering inside the classroom. So pushing the class teachers everywhere. I mean, either we provide a buffer system in the school where
Yes.
they're taken care of by another set of staff, and so the teachers are allowed to sit and work peacefully so that they improve student outcomes.
True. We speak from experience of having years being pushed around in classrooms, and truly, I think this podcast is just us feeling for the teachers and knowing the problems, and knowing what diverse situations they have to, what challenging situations they have to combat on a day-to-day.
I know, because when I knew that some substitutions are coming my way, because we knew some colleagues are going to be on leave, and I would plan my substitution classes also so beautifully. I enjoy doing that, because I would love to bring in a lot of mirth and laughter into the classroom, and I would go into the class and have fun and games and all that. But it takes away from what you are doing regularly. You are
Yes.
you are running through a lesson plan, you are constructing an assessment, and all that. The flow breaks. So I still feel that that's one thing that we need to kind of bring down to minimum.
Yeah. Maybe
Have a buffer system then. You have a buffer system. All right. So with this, we come to the end of this session. And based on feedback from each one of our viewers, we will see what to bring to the table in the following weeks.
So we look forward to your feedback. So that's it from us, Asha and Radhika. Thank you. Bye-bye. Bye-bye.
Good night.